You've been making life harder than it needs to be. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how a 700-year-old idea can transform the way you think and solve problems. Ever feel stuck when facing a tough decision? Or find yourself drowning in a sea of possibilities? That's overthinking, and it's holding you back. But there's a simple tool that can change all that. Occam's razor. This mental model is like a machete for your mind, cutting through confusion and leading you straight to the best solution. And the best part? It's so easy to use, you'll wonder why you didn't know about it sooner. In this video, I'll break down Occam's razor into 4 simple steps that you can start using today. Whether you're a student, professional, or just someone who wants to make better choices, this is going to be a game changer for you. So, are you ready to stop overthinking and start seeing clarity like never before? Let's dive in. What is Occam's razor? Let's start with the basics. What exactly is Occam's razor? It's not a fancy gadget or a complicated formula. It's a simple idea that's been around for centuries, and it goes like this. The simplest explanation is usually the right one. Imagine you're a detective trying to solve a mystery. You've got a bunch of clues and a lot of possible theories. Occam's razor tells you to pick the explanation that requires the fewest guesses or assumptions. It's like choosing the straightest path through a maze. Now, you might be wondering, who came up with this? Well, we can thank a 14th century English friar named William of Occam. He wasn't trying to invent a problem-solving tool. He was actually writing about God and theology. But his idea was so useful that it spread far beyond religion. So how does it work in practice? Let's say your car won't start. You could dream up all sorts of wild explanations involving sabotage or alien intervention. Or you could consider the simpler options first. Maybe the battery's dead, or you're out of gas. Occam's razor guides you to these more likely causes. But why call it a razor? Good question. It's because this principle helps us shave away unnecessary assumptions. Just like a razor removes excess hair, Occam's razor cuts away the fluff in our thinking. Here's the cool part. This isn't just some dusty old philosophy. Scientists use Occam's razor all the time. It helps them choose between competing theories. Businesses use it to solve problems efficiently, and you can use it to make better decisions in your everyday life. But don't worry, we're not saying the simplest answer is always right. Sometimes complex problems need complex solutions. Occam's razor is a guide, not a rule. It's a starting point that often leads us in the right direction. So next time you're stuck on a problem, remember Occam's razor. Ask yourself, what's the simplest explanation here? You might be surprised how often it points you toward the truth. The overthinking trap. We've all been there. You're faced with a decision, and suddenly your mind goes into overdrive. Should I take this job offer? What if it's the wrong choice? What if there's a better opportunity just around the corner? Before you know it, you're stuck in the overthinking trap. Overthinking isn't just annoying. It's a real problem that can hold you back in life. It's like having a browser with too many tabs open. Your mental processor slows to a crawl, and nothing gets done. So what exactly is overthinking? It's when you can't stop your mind from chewing on a problem long after it's useful. You keep going over the same ground, adding more and more what-ifs until you're paralyzed. The trouble is, our brains are really good at coming up with possibilities. That's usually a strength. But when we let it run unchecked, it turns into a weakness. We start seeing problems that aren't there, or blowing small issues way out of proportion. Here's why this matters. Overthinking doesn't just waste time. It actually leads to worse decisions. When you're stuck in your head, you're not taking action. You're not testing your ideas in the real world. And often, you end up making choices based on fear rather than opportunity. So how can you tell if you're overthinking? Watch out for these signs. You're going in mental circles, unable to move forward. You feel anxious about making a choice. You're imagining unlikely worst-case scenarios. If this sounds familiar, you're probably in the overthinking trap. It happens to all of us sometimes. Maybe you're trying to decide on a career move, or you're worried about a conversation you had yesterday. Students overthink exam answers. Entrepreneurs overthink business strategies. We even overthink small stuff, like what to wear to a party. But here's the good news. There's a way out, and it's simpler than you might think. Remember Occam's razor? It's not just for big philosophical questions. It's a powerful tool for cutting through overthinking in your everyday life. Applying Occam's razor. Now that we understand what Occam's razor is and why overthinking is a problem, let's get practical. How do we actually use this tool in our daily lives? I'm going to share a simple 4-step process that you can use to apply Occam's razor to any problem. It's so straightforward, you'll be able to start using it today. Step 1. Clearly identify the problem or question you're facing. Be specific. Instead of, "Why am I unhappy?" try, "Why do I dread going to work each morning?" Step 2. List out all the possible explanations or solutions you can think of. Don't judge them yet. Just get them all down. Step 3. Rank these explanations from simplest to most complex. Which ones require the fewest assumptions? Which are the most straightforward? Step 4. Start with the simplest explanation and test it. If it fits the facts and solves the problem, stop there. If not, move to the next simplest. Let's try an example. Say your friend hasn't returned your calls for a week. Your mind might jump to complex scenarios. They're mad at me, something terrible has happened, or they're planning a surprise party. But Occam's razor would guide you to simpler explanations first. Maybe they're just busy with work, or they forgot to charge their phone. These explanations require fewer assumptions and are more likely to be true. Now you might be wondering, does this work for all types of problems? The answer is, it works best for everyday decisions and common issues. For highly complex problems, you might need to modify the approach. But even then, starting with simpler explanations can point you in the right direction. Here's a key point. Occam's razor isn't about always choosing the simplest option. It's about starting with the simplest and working your way up as needed. If the simple explanation doesn't fit all the facts, you move on to more complex ones. This approach can solve problems you've been stuck on for weeks. By cutting through the clutter of overthinking, you often find that the answer was simpler than you imagined. But what if you're worried about oversimplifying? That's a valid concern. The key is to balance simplicity with accuracy. You're looking for the simplest explanation that fits all the facts, not just the simplest explanation. Period. Using Occam's razor can actually boost your confidence in decision-making. When you start with simpler explanations, you're often right more often. This builds trust in your own judgment over time. Remember, Occam's razor is a tool, not a rule. It's a starting point that often leads to the right answer, but always be ready to adjust if new evidence appears. So next time you're faced with a puzzling situation or a tough decision, try applying these 4 steps. You might be surprised at how quickly you cut through the confusion and find clarity. In our next section, we'll look at some real-world examples where simplicity wins. You'll see how Occam's razor has been used to solve problems in science, business, and everyday life. Stay tuned to see this powerful tool in action. When simplicity wins, let's look at some real-world examples where simplicity wins. You might be surprised how often the simplest solution turns out to be the best. In science, Occam's razor has led to some of our biggest breakthroughs. Take Newton's laws of motion. They explain complex phenomena with simple, elegant equations. Or consider Darwin's theory of evolution. It's a straightforward idea that explains the incredible diversity of life on Earth. But it's not just science. Businesses use this principle too. Look at Amazon. Their massive success comes from a simple idea: focus obsessively on the customer. This clear, simple strategy guides everything they do. So why does simplicity work so well? For one, simple solutions are faster to implement. They're easier to understand and explain to others. And they're often more flexible, adapting better when circumstances change. Some of the most successful people in history have embraced this approach. Steve Jobs was famous for it. He insisted on simplicity in Apple's products, saying, "Simple can be harder than complex." You have to work hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple. Einstein, too, was a fan of simplicity. He said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." That's a perfect summary of Occam's razor. Now, you might be thinking, that's great for geniuses, but how does this help me? Well, you can apply this principle in your everyday life. Got a messy room? Instead of complex organizing systems, start by simply putting things away. Struggling with a work problem? List out the simplest possible solutions first. Here's a personal example. I used to have a complicated morning routine with a dozen steps. I was always rushed and stressed, so I simplified. Now I just focus on 3 key things: a good breakfast, a short workout, and reviewing my day's priorities. It's simpler, and I start each day calmer and more focused. Remember, choosing the simple solution doesn't mean ignoring complexity when it's necessary. It means starting with simplicity and adding complexity only when you need to. It's about finding the balance between simple and simplistic. So next time you're facing a problem, big or small, try reaching for the simplest solution first. You might find that simplicity isn't just easier, it's often more effective too. Occam's razor isn't just a philosophical idea. It's a practical tool that can lead to real breakthroughs in your life and work. In our final section, we'll look at how you can sharpen your own razor. You'll learn techniques to make Occam's razor a natural part of your thinking process. Stay tuned to discover how you can become a master of simplicity. Sharpening your razor. Now that we've seen how powerful Occam's razor can be, let's talk about how to sharpen your own razor. How can you make this principle a natural part of your thinking? First, practice breaking down complex problems. When you face a big issue, try to split it into smaller, simpler parts. This makes it easier to apply Occam's razor to each piece. Next, get in the habit of challenging your assumptions. Whenever you're thinking about a problem, ask yourself, is there a simpler explanation I'm missing? This helps you avoid overthinking. Here's a great technique: the 5 whys. When you encounter a problem, ask why 5 times. Each answer becomes the basis for the next question. This often leads you to the simple root cause of complex issues. Remember, the goal is to start simple and add complexity only when you need to. In your daily life, try tackling problems with the simplest solution first. You'll be surprised how often it works. But watch out for some common pitfalls. Be aware of cognitive biases that lead us to favor complex explanations. We often think complicated answers sound smarter, but that's not always true. To build the habit, apply Occam's razor to everyday decisions. What to wear, what to eat, how to spend your free time. Start with the simplest options that meet your needs. Are there times when Occam's razor doesn't apply? Sure. In fields like quantum physics or advanced mathematics, the simplest explanation isn't always right. But even in these areas, scientists often start simple and add complexity as needed. To really sharpen your razor, combine it with other mental models. Use it alongside tools like cost-benefit analysis or the scientific method. This gives you a more robust thinking toolkit. Lastly, make simplification a regular practice. Periodically review your work processes, your daily routines, even your relationships. Ask yourself, how could this be simpler? You'll often find ways to cut away unnecessary complexity. Remember, mastering Occam's razor takes time. It's a skill you develop with practice. But the payoff is huge. Clearer thinking, faster problem solving, and better decisions. Conclusion. Here's your challenge. This week, whenever you face a problem or decision, big or small, try applying Occam's razor. Start with the simplest explanation or solution. You might be surprised at how often it works.